Welcome everyone to the fourth episode of our Tef Tech Talk podcast series. We are thrilled to have you join us today. My name is Kapil Duresamy and I will be your host for the today's session. Today, we are going to discuss a very important topic, planet over profit, and alarm to our future generations. In this podcast, we are going to discuss about climate change and its impact. Earth overshoot the climate impacts to future generations. Water stress, superfluous waste, consumers and manufacturers GHG emissions, and mitigations of emissions as an individuals. Our guest today, Mr. Manikandan, is a renowned climate enthusiast and GHG lead verifier, carbon footprint professional in this field. Will share deep insights on how we can balance economic growth with environmental conservation. Before we dive in, I am excited to share that today's session will be conducted in both languages, English and Tamil, allowing us to connect more deeply with our local audience and cultural context.
Thank you. Thanks for the detailed, introduction about me as well as about the topic which has been provided. So I'm very much happy to share my views related to the climatic change as well as the climatic impacts due to an individual contribution towards the environment.
As an environmentalist, we are familiar about climate crisis or climate impacts, but why planet over profit?
Okay. Because this topic should be, has been chosen because, people need to think. People need to, think twice because as whatever topics which you have talked about is all general topics like. But this one is something more related to the profit of the individual and how it is going to get affected towards the planet. So we are going to discuss a very detailed picture of how we are depleting the environmental resources without knowing. So all people, everybody was discussing, means about this climate change and all those things, but still nobody knows much about how we are depleting, what are all the source, and how to, eradicate these kind of depletions as an individual. Because most of the people on a daily day-to-day basis, they are just trying to deplete our only single earth. That's what this particular topic name is, like planet over profit. It's between an industrialist and the consumers. So both we are, as an individual, we are having a company. As a consumer, I'm just consuming a lot of goods. So we need to understand where we are depleting and how we are depleting. So, and because of that, what is the effect towards the environment? So that's what we are very clear. Planet is one, which is Earth, and profit is the one which the entire human society, which is depleting towards the usage of products as well as the services, which was provided by the industrialist. So we are going to discuss about it. That's what this is called, planet over profit.
சரி, ஓகே, இட்ஸ் வெரி நைஸ். பட் எல்லாருக்கும் கொஞ்சம் புரியுற மாதிரி இன்னும் கொஞ்சம் ஷார்ட்டா கொஞ்சம் தமிழ்லேயே மிக்ஸ் பண்ணி சொல்லுங்க.
டெஃபினட்டா. ஓகே. ஸோ தமிழில் சொல்கிறதுல என்ன ஒரே ஒரு மேஜர் ப்ளஸ் பாயிண்ட் அப்படின்னா, நம்ம தாய்மொழியில் இந்த விஷயத்த கேட்டோம் அப்படின்னா நம்ம மனசில் ரொம்ப அது பதியும். ஸோ தேங்க்ஸ் ஃபார் கிவிங் த ஆப்பர்ச்சுனிட்டி. ஸோ இது இந்த டாபிக் பிளானட் ஓவர் ப்ராஃபிட் அண்ட் இம்பேக்ட் ஆர் அன் அலாம் டு த ஃபியூச்சர் ஜென்ரேஷன் அப்படிங்கிறது தான் டாபிக். ஸோ இது பிளானட்டுங்கிறது இங்கே நம்ம எதை பற்றி பேசுகிறோம்னா எர்த்தை பற்றி பேச போகிறோம். ஸோ எர்த்தில் தான் நம்ம இருக்கோம். மிச்ச பிளானெட்டில் நம்மளால் இன்னமும் ரிசர்ச் போயிட்டுருக்கு. நம்மளால் இருக்கிறதுக்கான பாசிபிலிட்டிஸ் ரொம்ப கம்மி. ஸோ இந்த எர்த்துக்குன்னு சில பர்டிகுலர் ரிசோர்ஸஸ் இருக்குது. அதை தான் நம்ம கன்சியூம் பண்ணுறோம், அதை தான் நம்ம யூஸ் பண்ணுறோம், அதை தான் நம்ம டிப்ளீட்டும் பண்ணுறோம். ஸோ இதுதான் டிப்ளீட்டுங்கிறது. இங்கே நம்ம கெடுக்கிறோம். இருக்கிற என்வான்மெண்ட்டோட நிறைய நல்ல விஷயங்களை நம்ம இங்கே கெடுத்துக்கிட்டு இருக்கோம். எதுக்காக? நம்மளுடைய சுயநலத்துக்காக. அந்த சுயநலங்கிறது எதை சொல்கிறோம் அப்படின்னா, நமக்கு தெரியாமையே தப்புக்கள் நிறையா பண்ணுறோம். அதாவது தேவையில்லாத பல பொருளை வாங்குறது, தேவையில்லாத பல பொருளை கன்சியூம் பண்ணுறது, அதே மாதிரி எந்தவித பொறுப்புணர்ச்சியும் இல்லாமல் நம்மளுடைய சுய லாபத்துக்காக இண்டஸ்ட்ரீஸில் பலவிதமான ப்ரொடக்ஷன்ஸ் இதை இன்க்ரீஸ் பண்ணுறது, இது எல்லாமே ஒரு வகையாக நமக்கு நம்ம தேவைக்காக ஒரு பொதுவாக இருக்கிற சொத்தை நம்ம அழிச்சிட்டு இருக்கோம். அதுதான் இந்த டாப்பிக்கோட மெயின் கண்டென்ட். இப்படி நம்ம 1972 ஆல்மோஸ்ட் இப்போ நம்ம 2025 வரைக்கும் நமக்கு வந்து எவ்வளோ தூரம் அழிச்சிருக்கோம் அப்படின்னா, ஆல்மோஸ்ட் வந்து இந்த உலகம் இன்னொரு ஒரு 50 வருஷம் இல்ல ஒரு 100 வருஷம் மட்டும் தான் வந்து ஆ சராசரி ஒரு மனித வாழ்க்கை இருக்கும் அப்படிங்கிற லெவலுக்கு வந்து நம்ம அழிச்சிருக்கோம். அதனால ஃபியூச்சர் ஜெனரேஷன்ஸ் அதாவது நம்மளுடைய பசங்க, இல்ல நம்மளுடைய பேர பசங்க எல்லாருக்கும் வந்து இதே மாரி சுத்தமான காத்து கிடைக்குமா தெரியாது. நம்ம ஆல்ரெடி பாட்டில்ஸ்லலாம் வந்து தண்ணி வச்சு விக்கிறது, அத ஒரு ஃபேஷனாவே வந்து லாஸ்ட் ஒரு 25 இயர்ஸா பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கோம். இதே மாரி காத்தும் வரும். காத்தையும் வந்து பாட்டில்ல வந்து சேவ் பண்ணி வச்சு விப்பாங்க. அதையும் நம்ம வாங்குவோம். அதுதான் வந்து சுத்தமான காத்துன்னு நம்ம நம்பவும் வைப்பாங்க. அதுதான் நம்ம நாளைக்கு அதுதான் வந்து நமக்கு லைஃப்பும் தரப்போகுது. ஸோ இந்த மாரி பல விஷயங்கள பத்தி பேசுறதுக்காக இந்த பர்ட்டிகுலர் டாபிக்க நான் சூஸ் பண்ணியிருக்கோம்.
Coming to again the topic, why this climate change and this century 2000 and inelectable?
Okay. So climate change in 2000. Okay. So let me try to little bit in discussion about the why 2000 because in 1972 whenever this pre-industrial because before 1972 yes of course there are a lot of industries are there but at the meantime from 1972 there are a lot of economic projections has been happen all around the world especially in the Europe especially in America in these parts are very much inevitable in terms of industries. So because of that much particular industrial development which happened in 1972, now they are one of the superpowers like European countries as well as America and even China, for example. From exactly, if I want to tell, maybe like from 1990, they just kickstarted the industrial growth. So that particular 1990 when they started, and now we are almost 25 to 30 years. So now they are one of the pioneers in industries. So this is nothing but like before that means within 2000, before 25 years back and after 25 years back. So it is in between this 50 years. So 25 years back and 25 years ahead of 2000. That's what this is inevitable, we are taking that 2000 year is as one of the baseline year for this particular topic. So if you want to see technically a little more about it because the emissions okay, if I want to tell anything about emissions, before that we need to know about what is the basics, why we are telling these is all emissions. Whatever we are consuming, whatever we are taking as a service, so everything is related to a product. The product has been manufactured by an industry. That industry needs to source the material from some other industry. So it's a kind of supply chain basically from the inception stage till the end of the product. So for example, even if we take a tea bag, even if we can take a only the tea bag for a normal cup of tea, we people will think that it's only a tea bag and we will throw it away. But we need to understand very much in detail how this particular tea bag came to our table as a tea. So before that, what all process are there? Before that, what all things are there? Nobody will, think about it. So this is like a very much interested topic. This is normally called LCA, called life cycle assessment of an individual product. So all these things, it totally related to the product. It totally talks about the product life cycle. So we will discuss more about before 2000. That means from 1970 till after 2000 till 2024. We have a base report from IPCC. So IPCC is one of the important non-profit organization which will disclose every year like what is the percentage of amount of emission, especially in terms of CO2 equivalent to the globe. So they are keep on discussing about a lot of topics. They will issue the reports generally every year. So based on the reports, we are already crossed 1.5 degree Celsius, which is one of the pivotal information. So we are almost crossed 1.5 in 2024 and we are now into 2 degrees Celsius. Because of these particular climatic change, especially in terms of temperatures, why I'm talking about, we are facing like the very catastrophic events like as we earlier discussed like about the California wildfire which happened in January 2025. which totally, almost around $200 billion has been wasted because of this particular wildfire incident. And typically, like Chennai cyclone, Chennai cyclone name called Fengal in 2024, I think we faced, where even our state government has requested more than 6,000 crores for this particular, damages. So typically, there are a lot of other examples as well, like Saudi floods in 2024 August, and the Santorini earthquake, which happened very recently. So even you cannot be able to imagine, like, even within a week time, a country or a city, Santorini, which is got affected almost 7,000 times of earthquakes. 7,000 times earthquake had happened within a week time. So which never happened in the history. So all these scenarios are happening because of this particular temperature change, because of this particular more emissions from these kind of industries and from as an individual to us. So we are going to discuss much about it. Thank you.
ஓகே. நம்மளுடைய ப்ரோமோல இத பத்தின எல்லாமே நீங்க டிஸ்கஸ் பண்ணீங்க. பட் 2 டிகிரி செல்சியஸ் வெதர் அவர் ஃபியூச்சர் ஜெனரேஷன்ஸ் ஆர் கோயிங் டு ஃபேஸ் த இம்பாக்ட் ஆர் வி ஆர் ரெஸ்பான்சிபிள் ஃபார் த சேம்?
ரெண்டுமே தான். ஃபியூச்சர் ஜென்ரேஷன்ஸ் வந்து கண்டிப்பாக இம்பேக்டை பார்க்க போகிறாங்க. நம்மளே பார்த்துக்கிட்டு இருக்கோம். அதுதான் நான் இந்த சில எக்ஸாம்பிள்ஸ்லாம் வந்து நம்ம ப்ரோமோவில் ஈவன் இப்போ வீடியோவில் கூட டிஸ்பிளே ஆகிட்டு இருக்கோம். மெயினாக வந்து நம்ம எல்லாமே வந்து மோஸ்ட்லி தமிழ்நாடு அப்படிங்கிறதுனால சென்னையில் வந்து இருக்கிற ஃப்ளட்ஸை ஒரு எக்ஸாம்பிள் எடுத்துக்குவோம். சென்னையில் 2024 ஃபெங்கல் சைக்ளோன் வந்துச்சு. அது வந்து விச் மேட் அஸ் ஆல்மோஸ்ட் அரௌண்ட் 12 பீப்புள் டைட் அண்ட் அரௌண்ட் 6,000 crores வந்து நம்ம கேட்டிருக்கோம். அதாவது சென்ட்ரல் கவர்மெண்ட்டை கேட்டிருக்கோம். ஸோ இந்த மாதிரி நிறையா இம்பேக்ட்ஸ் சென்னையில் நான் வந்துச்சு. அது மாதிரி ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள் கலிஃபோர்னியாவில் இப்போ ஜனவரியில் 2025 ஒரு மேஜர் வைல்ட் ஃபயர். ஸோ அதனால் வந்து யூஎஸ் கவர்மெண்ட்டுக்கு வந்து மோர் தென் 200 பில்லியன் அமௌண்ட் ஸ்பெண்ட் பண்ணாங்க. அதாவது அவ்வளோ பொருட்கள் வந்து நஷ்டமாச்சு. அதே மாதிரி வந்து ஈவன் இன் சவுதி, அவர் நியரஸ்ட் கண்ட்ரி, அங்கே வந்து எப்பயுமே வந்து சவுதி வந்து மழை பெய்யும். பட் இவ்வளோ பெரிய இம்பேக்டில் மழை பெய்யும் வித்தின் எ ஷார்ட் டியூரேஷன் ஆஃப் டைம் அப்படிங்கிறதுலாம் இல்லை. திடீர்னு இந்த சேஞ்சஸ் எல்லாமே நம்மளே பார்த்துக்கிட்டு இருக்கோம். ஸோ டெஃபினட்டாக ஃபியூச்சர் ஜென்ரேஷன்ஸ் வந்து இந்த இம்பேக்ட்ஸ்லாம் அவங்களுக்கு பழகி போயிடும், ரொம்ப நார்மல் ஆயிரும். ஸோ இதெல்லாம் வந்து நம்ம டீட்டெயிலாக வந்து பேச போகிறோம். ஸோ இந்த இம்பேக்ட்டுக்கு எல்லாத்துக்குமே காரணம் வந்து இந்த எமிஷன்ஸ் தான். இந்த எமிஷன்ஸுக்கான முக்கிய காரணம் வந்து இண்டிவிஜுவலாக நம்ம நிறையா கான்ட்ரிபியூட் பண்ணுறோம், என்டையர் பாப்புலேஷன் ஆஃப் த வேர்ல்டு. அதே மாதிரி இண்டஸ்ட்ரீஸ் வந்து ரொம்ப ஹெவியாக வந்து கான்ட்ரிபியூட் பண்ணுது இந்த எமிஷன்ஸுக்கு. ஸோ இதில் வந்து இப்போ நம்ம இன்றைக்கி பேச போகிறது வந்து இண்டஸ்ட்ரீஸ் பற்றி ரொம்ப கம்மியாக பேசுகிறோம், இண்டிவிஜுவல்ஸை பற்றி கொஞ்சம் நிறையா பேசுவோம், வித் அகெயின் டீட்டெயில் கால்குலேஷன்ஸ் வச்சு பேசுவோம். தேங்க்யூ.
Okay, the temperatures increases 2 degrees. The reason is greenhouse effect. Yes. Can you explain detail?
Greenhouse. Okay, good. So greenhouse effect, I think everybody thinks that everybody knows the content of GHG, effect, which normally people talks. But generally, in a very basic way, if I want to tell, greenhouse effect is nothing but, for example, we are living in a small house which is made up of glass, where the sun is keep on emitting sun rays. Because of the heavy sun rays, we are facing, or we are feeling the heat which is getting trapped due to this particular glass. So that is called the greenhouse effect. The same effect, it's happening for all fossil fuel emissions, which is especially called greenhouse gases. So there are total 7 greenhouse gases are there. So which is the major contributor is CO2 as well as CH4, which is very common. So these all gases, whenever an industry is keep on emitting these particular 7 different gases to the atmosphere, or maybe as an individual we are emitting towards the atmosphere, these particular gases has its own GWP potential value, which varies for each gases. For example, for CO2 it is 1, and for example it is for CH4 it is 28. So this particular GWP means it is the potential wherein which the particular gas will keep on withstand in the atmosphere layer, in the ozone layer before to that atmosphere. So in that particular ozone layer, these gases will be trapping that entire sunlight radiations whenever it is popping up, and it will not give it away outside, as well as it will keep on give it to us, towards us. That means within the atmosphere, within our globe, so that only we are facing these major climate changes. So these particular temperature changes will impact a lot of changes because as we are all living in an ecosystem. So this is called, briefly about greenhouse effect. So the gas which is emitting whichever the greenhouse gases are emitting outside, which will trap the heat of the sun radiations, and it will not give it outside the atmosphere. Instead, it will give within our atmosphere. This is called greenhouse gas.
And what is GHG emissions outcome is?
Okay, it's a very good question. So GHG emission, as we discussed earlier about greenhouse effect and its greenhouse gases. So greenhouse emissions is nothing but, for example, on a daily basis. See, I came here for this particular podcast through a vehicle. You came here through a vehicle. So typically, every products which we are consuming, everything, whichever we are seeing in and around mic, everything, whatever the things, the particular product manufacturer or particular manufacturing facility will emit plenty amount of greenhouse gases, which is nothing but the emissions from the plant. As well as an individual, we are also emitting through a different mediums. Like even if you are charging our phone, that is nothing but we are consuming power. That power is from particular gas. Here as we are in Kuwait, we are getting the power from the gas-based power plants. So where the gas is totally, natural gas, they are keep on, emitting. Like they are utilizing the gas and they are giving the power. So how much amount of, the product or an energy which we are consuming, we are emitting in parallel. So we need to think in that way. And because of that particular emissions, we are facing this kind of scenarios, like as we talked about greenhouse gas. Because of that particular scenarios, the entire atmosphere is trapping the heat of 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius, which is totally against our natural ecosystem. So that only we are facing these kind of issues, like maybe, for example, the global rising temperature is the one, because we are feeling the same even during the hot time and all. Nowadays, we are crossing more than 53 degrees Celsius even in Kuwait. And typically the sea level rise, which we have already, witnessed in sea areas like in Mumbai as well as in Chennai, as well as in Indonesia, we face a lot of issues over there. And also the agricultural changes. Agricultural changes means because of this particular, kind of different climatic scenarios, like whenever, because before 1990s and all, we know these durations, like for example, January to March is the one where we will get a heavy, snow. And from April to July, we will be having summertime. So accordingly, our crops cultivations, our farmers, they planned it, and they just do the cultivation activities. Even that also nowadays it got defected because of this, very much fluctuations in the climatic scenarios. Like nowadays, we are facing within 2 days, we are witnessing more than 45 centimeters of rainfall, which needs to be happened on the same area, maybe for 1 year duration. But instead, within 2 days, now we are facing these issues. So because of this hectic climatic actions, hectic rainfall or hectic the temperature rise, which impacts to the drought situations, which is again, inbuilt to the, the production of food. Then this is a kind of cycle, because we are all living in an ecosystem. So that is also getting affected. And typically we are facing more air pollution even here. So because of these particular GHG emissions, and even the health risk is more because of these kind of air pollutions, these kind of, chemical based products. And typically the entire, the migration changes are happening. Migration changes means because in certain areas of the certain parts of the world where it is totally, not feasible to live because of these particular climatic scenarios. And as per IPCC reports, the seashore areas, it is going to get, covered by the existing seashore, maybe around 3 to 5 meters inside. So it is going to happen maybe like 2030 or 2040. It is going to happen very soon. So these kind of all major scenarios are happening towards us. So these are all the major outcomes of the GHG emissions. Thank you.
Hence, in this one. But United Nations, and they were conducting so many camp awareness session and activity, but then so many NGOs are also there to reduce the temperature. And what is the major deflections as an individual?
Okay, as an individual, as I already mentioned, See, for example, on our daily day-to-day basis, we are using water. Okay, so water is one of the primary source. For example, the freshwater supply from from natural based freshwater supply is only 0.03%, maybe less than 0.1% it was. But still, we are keep on consuming, for industries and even for us. For example, even if we take, I can show it to you in a calculation which totally talks about the water stress even in our presentation. So, water stress is one of the major important factors which we have faced. Even Kuwait is one of the water stress countries. I think Kuwait is third water stress country, if I'm not wrong. So, this particular water stress means nothing but what is the source? Our consumption is more, but our source is very less. So, for example, within Kuwait, we have this much amount of water from the source, but we are depleting more. That means we are consuming more than the availability. This is called the water stress. So, already these major countries like India, China, as well as Kuwait, and some other Cyprus, Bahrain, Lebanon, these countries comes under the water stress countries, where they are consuming more, but the source is less.
Basis. Thank you. The depletions as an individual, the Earth owes to days.
அதை கொஞ்சம் explain பண்ணு. Okay, so concept, because as per United Nations, World Environmental Day, which we normally conduct in June 5th. So during that day, it was a decision which was made by United Nations. We need to find out every country how much they are depleting the earth. In turn, earth, how it will regenerate the same, which means nothing but each country, there is a population. That population totally depends on certain things. For example, in certain countries where the population will be less, but their consumption is more. In terms of waste, in terms of energy, in terms of production, in terms of GHG emissions. So all these things in together per capita or per people, how much they are keep on.
Okay, very nice. As an individual, people are using water, even washing hands, mouthwash, brushing time, they are opening the water and they are wasting water. This is usual practice. So much of water waste. But can you calculate of the water stress?
Yeah, there is a calculation. I think we can display that particular calculation. Let me tell it in oral, but in the meantime, we can display it in the screen to all audiences in order to understand why we are calling water stress and what is the reason behind it. So, in a normal domestic purpose, especially like washing the clothes or maybe utensils or whatever, on a daily basis, like in the restrooms we are using, all these things, each person minimum, especially only for toilet purpose, they are utilizing more than 25 liters of water per day, just for only bathing. Okay, and typically for utensils and other things, we are consuming more than 60 to 80 liters of water per day. This is a minimum for one person. So, for a rough calculation, I have already made the synopsis, like for Tef team members, we have around 1,000 members. I'm just considering as a scenario, just a scenario. So 1,000 members are there. In their families, 3 members I calculated. So total 3,000 people are there in and around Tef. We are all involved. So for 3,000 people per day, only for this general purpose, we are wasting almost 75,000 liters of water unknowingly. Okay, just to resolve certain purposes only. So in order to avoid this 75,000 liters per day, just only for TEF community members on a day-to-day basis activities, which is very common. So there are some certain equipments are already available in the market, especially which can be used to minimize the flow, but the purpose can be resolved. So those particular products of the solutions, which is very common in certain countries, especially in Europe, but still it needs to be adopted in countries like India and countries, all Gulf countries over here. So those equipments are very much important, which will minimize the amount of flow, which will obviously minimize around 70 to 80% of the water consumption. So if we are using those particular equipments in our washing taps as well as in the restrooms, we will minimize this particular same purpose, but we will utilize only 25,000 liters of water. So this will totally minimize the entire water stress in countries like Kuwait. So those calculations has been already captured. Thank you.
Okay, very interesting. And maybe it will be useful for our TEP members, and maybe we can take some initiative. And there is another term, superfluous wastes, and the same type of calculation. Can you provide anything?
Okay, so superfluous waste is nothing but the waste which we are, giving back to the earth, such as our plastics. Especially in Kuwait, we are using, our normal activities totally depends on plastics. So this particular plastics, for an approximation, let me tell you, like one person, he is consuming around 12 plastic bags. 12 plastic bags, okay, for the entire duration of month. So if we calculate for around the entire TEF members, it is coming like, in terms of this particular plastic consumption, which I'm trying to convey in terms of bottles, like whatever we are using for drinking, water, juice, or maybe in our consumption products, and for our normal mobility, usage of food, all these things comes under the plastic. So per person, there is using 12 plastic bags per day. These items as a normal consumption, and it will be again posted as a waste. So if we calculate for the TEF members, only for plastic I'm talking about, not for other waste, both combustible, non-combustible wastes are there. Like, so those waste I'm not talking about here, only with respect to plastics. So only for TEF members, around 10,80,000 pieces or bottles or items which will be utilized for the entire year. So this is the overall calculation for entire month. It's not for year, sorry, it's for the entire month. And per year, our TEF members is consuming more than 3.94 crores approximately. This is the value on a daily, day-to-day basis. If all people are there, the entire quantum of people. So this much amount of waste we are dumping back to the earth. These particular plastics are not easily degradable. So this is one of the biggest issue which earth is facing. So this is what we are trying to say in terms of superfluous waste.
But I feel every year we are celebrating so many functions, 3,000, 4,000 water bottles we have spent. Is there any things to include our before the program event, or anything is there we can do this awareness?
Yeah, see, as I mentioned earlier, there is a commercial cartoon water boxes are available, which is already available in the market. There are some startups are there. So you can able to utilize those particular products, which is purely biodegradable. There is no plastics are there. And it comes for even 5 liters, 15 liters, 20 liters also. So, it is typically like our normal PVC type, plastic water bottles, but still it is fully biodegradable. Once the water usage was done, it will be disposed and it will be normal. This is for functions. And try to improvise your promotion culture, like giving more, in terms of other gifts or memento, try to give kind of water bottles which is made up of steel instead of plastics, and ask them to and promote them, because nowadays there are some water bottles are already available which shows our entire water consumption per day, and it will give intimation also. There are some water bottles are available in the market, so which will talks about how much we took, and means every time it will alert us, and also every time it will give an intimation also. So we need to just only thing, we need to refill it. So this will avoid heavy junk of plastic usage as an individual. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe in future programs, slowly we are just starting an initiative with one.
Sure.
And what is individuals over product usage?
Okay. So this is again a big topic. Individual over the product usage, which is the total main scenario for all these GHG emissions. So individual product usage is nothing but, for example, we are taking a cup of coffee. What do you think? We will always think that this is only a cup of coffee or cup of tea. So even to have a cup of tea or a tea bag, okay, we don't know what is the history of the tea bag. So individual product life cycle is nothing but that particular tea bag comes from where? From some industries like Tata or some industries. That particular industry has took some resources in order to make this kind of tea bags. that resources are from which some sub-vendors, some companies. So there is a kind of classification, there is a kind of life cycle supply chain, management. It's a kind of ecosystem. It will start from the source of procuring the material, and that particular material needs to get dumped in any one particular warehouse. From the warehouse, it needs to be transported to the particular industry. From the particular industry, this particular tea bag manufacturing needs to be done. Then particular tea bag needs to be again distributed to different countries through different like seaways, airways. So all those things. Then it needs to reach to the particular dealer in a warehouse. Then from the warehouse, it needs to again departed to other distribution centers. Then from the distribution centers to the wholesale markets. Then it will come to us. So there is a big chain of network. Everywhere this, in order to make this particular tea bag that what we consume on a daily basis has emitted this much amount of, GHG emissions. So from the starting of sourcing or procuring, transportation, distribution, storage, industry manufacturing, then again storage, then again transportation towards the distribution centers, then storage, then to the outlets. So such a big life cycle has the entire emission ratios. There is emissions. This is what normally we call the GHG emissions for a product. In order to have this particular cup of tea in our hand. So what we are trying to give our feedback here is try to consume less products. Just maybe in the video you can able to see that how much amount of products we are keep on consuming, on a daily day-to-day basis. For example, even for a normal purpose like going outside, we are having 3 shoes, or for office we are having 2 to 3 shoes. So typically, like even in women's also they are using lot of products. Even it is knowingly or unknowingly, we keep on procuring. So as a company or as an industry, they are witnessing us as an individual as a product, and we are also keep on demanding the products whichever is not required or unneeded. We are keep on making the products, and those products we are not aware that this much amount of emissions are there. This much amount of emissions it come away, go through all these emissions, because we are not aware. While having a cup of tea, even in the display, when able to see the entire life cycle of the tea bag. And typically for each product has its own life cycle in terms of emissions. So how much amount of consumption we are keep on taking is nothing but we are depleting. Thank you.
You explained in very detail, but they could not understand exactly what is scope.
Okay. So this is a technical term which normally, the environmental based team or, kind of sustainability professionals will be using this. This is called scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3. There are 3 different scopes. And even nowadays, scope 4 has been initiated recently. So what is scope 1? Scope 1 is nothing but whatever the product which we are consuming that has its own industry based, some industry which was the product has been made up of. That particular industry, how much it is emitting within the industry boundary. For example, inside the KOC, example I am talking about. So within KOC, in order to make a crude, in order to take it out the crude, what all things we are emitting to the globe in order to make the crude. So this is called scope 1. Within the company boundary, how much is the emission? It's called fugitive emissions. There are a lot of emissions are there under scope 1. That is called direct GHG emissions, scope 1. Within the boundary of the firm or a industry. If it is a software company, yes, what all emissions? For example, in a software company, maybe 1,000 employees are working. So those 1,000 employees are sitting in one office. That particular office has been, construction as well as, that particular emissions are happening within the particular corporate office in terms of waste, in terms of emissions through energy consumption. All these things will be considered as a scope 1 emissions. Scope 2 emissions are the one which is from external to the internal. External to the internal means the same software company, how much amount of energy it is consuming from an external network. That might be a steam, that might be a HVAC, or that might be an electricity. So whichever is coming away from their boundary to their boundary. So those emissions how much that is also they are consuming. That energy is required, that steam is required for an industries. So these all emissions, for example, the electricity usage comes under scope 2 emissions. So based on how much amount of wattage we are using, based on that how much amount of gas has been utilized. So all these things will be considered as scope 2 emissions, will be calculated in terms of CO2 equivalent. This is called scope 2. Scope 3 emissions, which is the biggest one, as I already mentioned in our previous discussion, it's the entire product life cycle. It talks about from the source, procuring of the material, transportation of the material, then the material needs to be stored in the warehouse, then from warehouse to the industries where it has been produced, then from industries to again to the next distribution networks through transportation, then to the outlets, then till the particular equipment or a product will be utilized by an individual till the end of the particular product. All these emissions will come in scope 3. It has its own categories as well. It includes almost around 15 categories as per GHG protocol. So each category emissions will be calculated under the scope 3 emissions. So combinedly, as a company or as an individual, we will calculate and it will contribute how much comes under scope 1, how much comes under scope 2, how much comes under scope 3 emissions. And the equivalent CO2 value will be calculated for all the emissions of the particular product or particular service. And it will be notified to the government, so that the government will take the entire index of this particular GHG emissions and it will be mentioned in the sustainability reporting, which normally termed as ESG reportings, which includes all environment, social and governance based reporting of the particular firm. So that based on this particular reporting from the government, for example, as a Kuwait government, they already set a target for 2050 for the net zero emissions. So all these emissions, from which scope we are getting it more, either from scope 1 or scope 2 or scope 3, based on that KOC or KIPIC or EQUAPE will comes to know these are all areas I need to concentrate in order to minimize these emissions. These are all areas which I need to concentrate, because in these areas only I am facing this much of emissions, so I need to minimize it. So how to minimize it? There are some different technologies are there. That technologies includes usage of like renewable energy sources for all scope 2 emissions, and usage of other products which I have mentioned for even for water usage. There are different products are there which will minimize the flow, which will minimize the water stress. And typically for other products which totally talks about the entire toilet system doesn't require water, which will be also shown in the video. So there are different products are there. In order to minimize all this maximum consumption, try to be in a very eco-friendly way to minimize all these emissions. And typically there are some technology called carbon capture technology, which will be utilized, which is called CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and sequestration. So whatever we are emitting from towards the outside, for all industries, it will be captured directly from the point of source, and it will be keep on controlled, stored in the underground. So which is a very new technologies which has been already popped up in other countries as well. So I think slowly in Kuwait also we can expect. Even KPC has its own target in 2050 for the net zero emissions. So there are different technologies are there in order to minimize all these scope emissions. So as an individual, we need to be sure whatever we require, we need to use. Whatever we don't require, try to avoid it. Else, it will be a biggest threat to the future generation, because all these emissions, knowingly or unknowingly, we are totally, we are the owner of the incidents. So we need to be aware about it and try to minimize it. Else the future generation will be, they will face unrest day almost, every month, minimum 1 week or 2 weeks with all these catastrophic events.
Okay, it's a very informative and detailed explanation. As you said, in 2050, KOC, KPC, KNBC, Kuwait, everybody having their own target to achieve some the 0% emission. Everybody will going to calculate out. But finally, before conclude, so we have shown already in the promo to protect our future generations. What is the conclusion we need to give for this podcast?
Okay, the conclusion is the disciplined way of usage of material as an individual. Try to utilize more products where we can able to save water as well as where we can able to save the energy, and whenever we need, then procure the material. Unless otherwise, don't procure any unwanted materials just for the purpose. So the major conclusion, as an individual, only these 3 points. But as an industry, yes, already each industries are having their own target. This is called sustainability, targets. So as a country also, they are having a target. So each country has its own target. KPC, Kuwait-based K companies, has its own target in 2050 for the energy sector. They need to be net zero. Net zero means whatever we are talking about in terms of all emissions, they are going to put zero. So that is called net zero emissions. So they are having the target in 2050. In order to obtain the particular 2050 target, they need to adopt a lot of new technologies, like as I mentioned, carbon capture technologies, renewable resources, especially for the power sectors, and also renewable materials. Instead of plastics, we need to be totally converted into biodegradable materials. And as a society, we need to adopt it in a disciplined way in order to maintain our earth in a normal way. Else, our future generations are at very high risk. So this is what the topic, conclusion of the day.
Okay, I think it will be very useful for our FENs. With this, we are concluding the today's session. And on behalf of our TEF team and listeners, I would like to extend our heartfelt thanks to Mr. Manihendan for taking the time to be with us today. And there is one small moment from TEF. I'm just
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
a big thank our listeners for tuning in. Your support and engagement mean a lot to us. We hope you found this session enlightening and informative. Please stay tuned for our next episode where we will continue exploring new topics. Until next time, take care and keep seeking knowledge.